Hello and welcome to the halftime show for this round 4 catch-up match between South Cardiff and Charlestown. Joining me on the couch today, we've had a change of scenery for this midweek match, is Emily Frost, the club captain from the Adamstown Rosebuds. Thanks for joining us, Emily.
Thanks, Ben.
Now,
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. Now, the reason you're here is to speak about the Women in Football week that we had last week with Northern New South Wales. Now, what was your first experience with football? And why was it a sport that you wanted to go down the path of playing?
Well, my first experience with football is probably with watching my brother play. He's been playing since under sixes or whatever, but, you know, we've always played netball in my family, and a friend from school just asked me, do you want to play soccer this year? And I was 14, and I just said, yeah, I'll give it a go, and started at Merriweather. So it's been a pretty short road, but a pretty good one.
Now, do you still play netball at the moment, or have you switched to soccer now?
Yeah, I do still play both. I'm lucky that I'm able to keep playing both, and they're good sports that I happen to love both.
Now, when did you change from Merriweather to playing? Because you're playing first grade for Adamstown this year. This is your first year.
Yeah.
When did you change clubs?
I've changed clubs. This will be my third year at Adamstown this year. And yeah, it's been probably the best thing for me.
Now, in terms of this week for women's football, how important is it to have this week to promote women's football in Northern New South Wales? And it's great to have their support for this.
Yeah, I think it's really important. The number of women playing football has increased so much over the past couple of years, and I think it's really important to acknowledge the work that people have done behind the scenes. So I know our game against Warners Bay on the weekend, we had pink and teal ribbons for breast cancer and ovarian cancer for our manager, Maz Klassen, who passed away last year. She was really instrumental in promoting women's football in Northern and at Adamstown as well, so we just wanted to pay respect to her.
Why do you think that football is one of the most popular sports for girls under, say, netball? Netball's the obvious one, but why do you think football's so popular?
I think it's just becoming a lot more common, like especially in the under sixes age groups. You look now and you can go on a weekend and watch the under six girls teams play against the boys. There are whole teams now where girls are really getting into it and seeing it as a potential option rather than just going, oh, I'll just play netball this year. I think it's really, Northern have done a really good job in promoting it, and with the free soccer balls and the shin pads, it's just getting a lot more girls involved.
Now, the women's W League team, I remember at the start of the year, they were written off by everyone. The last few years they've come close to the bottom of the ladder, if not at the bottom. When Nathan Tinkler put money into them a few years ago, they brought in all the star players, still didn't make the finals. And then this year, Emily Van Egmond returned, some younger and some players from the region, and all of a sudden they almost made the finals. And if it wasn't on the last day for Sydney FC, I think getting the win in a really wet day, they would have made it to the finals.
Yeah, I think Emily coming in this year, there's just been a very different dynamic within the team. They got it in their heads pretty early that they were capable of causing upsets in the year, and they didn't really have anything to lose, and I think they played some really good football.
Now, Pete McGuinness, of course, won the W League Coach of the Year in the W League Awards. How much of an influence do you think that is going to have, and I should say, how much of an influence do you think that win is going to have on the region in Northern New South Wales?
I think it's a really good award for him to have won. He's done a really good job elevating the girls this season, and just basically pointing out that here in the Hunter we've got some great football happening, and that we're doing the right things and getting the results.
Now, speaking of higher up women's football, the Matildas, of course, they're playing in the World Cup this year. They've got a really tough group. They've got Nigeria, America, and I can't think of the other side that they have got in their pool, but it's something like the African champions. It's Sweden, isn't it? Sweden's the other side, yep. And they lost to them in the quarterfinals at the last World Cup. So we heard today that Kate Gill was omitted, and one of the goalkeepers as well.
Yeah, Brianna Davey missed out on selection this year, which I think was really crushing for her. But in saying that, there are players that have been pushed up to the squad that haven't been there in a little while, like Melissa Barbieri and that kind of thing. So it'll just be interesting to see how it comes out when it comes to the World Cup.
Kate Gill was the leading scorer in the W League this year. Any reason why you think she would have been left out?
I really have no idea. I can't imagine why. She's been in great form. She has played really well for Perth, so I can't really understand that one, but that's probably why I'm not a selector.
Now, Women's World Cup this year, we've spoken about just a moment ago, USA, Nigeria and Sweden. How do you think the Matildas are going to go?
I think they'll give some teams a good run for their money, but it'll really come down to how they play on the day. And how they turn up, especially against teams like USA. They're big names. They've got, women that have been up for World Player of the Year and that kind of thing. So it'll just be how they rise up to that occasion in that group stage. And,
of course, America have got some of the best players in the world. As we know, they've got a very star-studded lineup of women in world football. Now, Women's World Cup this year, it's being played on synthetic pitches. Do you think, the Males World Cup would never, in the next 20 years, I don't think it would be played on synthetic pitches. Why do you think they're trialling it on the women?
I'm not really sure. I think there is a lot of shift, especially in women's football at the moment. A lot of the Sydney leagues are playing on synthetic down there. I know in America, a lot of the colleges are playing on synthetic. So I think it just might be a shift where, you don't have to worry about the weather, and it's something that most of the girls were probably used to.
Do you think it's fair that they're trialling that on the biggest stage in the women's football calendar?
I think they've got to trial it sometime, either way, whether it's the men or the women.
Because I was thinking maybe an under-19s and under-20s event.
Yeah.
But it's the biggest stage in the women's football calendar, and I don't really agree with it.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting strategy. I'm not quite sure why they would do it at this time, especially straight into a World Cup, but realistically, all the teams are going to have to deal with it and get used to it and play their best football as they can.
Now let's talk about your side, Adamstown. They're second on the ladder. Only the one lost to Merewether. They're coming first. There's a massive change in, massive difference in standards, as we can see on the ladder there. Merewether United up the top on 21, Adamstown 18, and then a massive drop off to Valentine. Is that an issue for the league?
I don't think so. I think the quality is a little bit different this year, but it means that there's opportunities for the young girls that have been in sort of the reserve grades for the past couple of years, have the opportunity to stand up and be the senior players and, have the ability to play some good football.
How do you think you guys can go over the back half of the year?
I'm thinking we should go pretty well. We've got a great bunch of girls at Adamstown, and we've got some really solid players in Claire Cummings and Mickey Howell that have been really solid over the past few years. So they're leading from the front, and we've got a good team unit. So we're playing some good football.
What do you think are the key sort of ideas for the Women's Premier League moving forward, and the key things that Northern need to think about? Because we've had a lot of sides coming in and coming out. Do you think it's growing, and do you think we can get that more depth of talent that can make it a more even competition?
Yeah, I think Northern have done a pretty good job with entering the 3 clubs in this year, Wallsend, South Wallsend and Warners Bay, and having the younger girls come in the 14s and 16s. I think it's really added some depth to the league, and it's really something to take notice of these days.
And of course, Football Mid-North Coast coming in as well, which is good to see, sort of the expanding area of the region.
Yeah, well, they've been there for a few years now, and the quality is up there. They play good football. I know we always struggle to put in a good game against them. It's just a shame they've got a lot of young girls who are having to step up and being thrown in the deep end, but they have some great players up there. So hopefully towards the end of the season they get some good games in. And
of course, Lake Macquarie, one of the strongest sides from a few years ago. They, a couple of years ago, pulled out their women's team from the competition because they wanted to focus on the men. Is that disappointing in a way as a woman playing football in the region?
I think it is a little bit disappointing, but it's not a trend that's kind of been uncommon. Charlestown pulled out, Edgeworth pulled out, Lakes pulled out. It came down to, it seems, some clubs believe they had to go one or the other, and unfortunately men is just a little bit more productive in terms of financial and publicity reasons and that kind of thing. So it is a shame, but I think it has created some good opportunities for clubs like Wallsend and South Wallsend that do have the really good youth girls base. They've been able to come into the league and really have an impact.
It seems to me like those top clubs that are in the NPL this year can't really have both sides. They can't have the men or the women at some of those sides, as we saw in the ladder. A majority of them aren't NPL playing sides.
Yeah, I realistically, they've made a decision that they needed to focus on one or the other, and whether that pays off for them or not, that's really going to be up to them.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes in the future, and hopefully it can all come out nicely and it can keep growing in the region. Well, Emily, thank you for joining us on the couch for this round 4 match and having a look back at the women's in football round, which was fantastic in the week that Northern New South Wales organised and everything. So thanks for joining us, and hope and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you.
Reminder that on Bar TV we will be covering the women's grand final this year. So whether that's Merewether or Adamstown, which it is looking like at the moment, that's going to be a grudge match for sure. We'll be out there to cover it, which is going to be great. So thanks again, Emily. I think I've said that 3 times. And that's the end of the halftime show for this week. It's been great to have your company. And until this Friday night when we see the Jets Youth take on Broadmeadow Magic, it's goodbye from the halftime show.